Welcome to Well Good Movies, the podcast which asks which movies are well worth watching and remembering for all time. Every episode we discuss a different piece of film history to decide if it should make its way into our movie vault. Filled with questions, trivia and crazy challenges, it's the perfect way to deep dive into a myriad of movies. But don't just take my word for it. Here's a glimpse of what to expect in today's episode.
He's from Hong Kong, he's from LA. Boom. That's all you need to know. He's good at punching and he's good at shouting.
Can I just say, when Paul just said he's from Hong Kong, he's from LA, for some reason I imagined it as one of the lyrics to Avril Lavigne's Skater Boy.
He's from Hong Kong, he's from LA. Right. What more can
I say?
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Are you not entertained? Great Scott!
I'll be back.
Here's Johnny.
Oh, hi, Mark.
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
I'm Batman. It's not a boss, it's a silly movie. I'll you, my pretty.
To infinity and beyond. You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
Well, good movies.
Hello and welcome to Well Good Movies, the podcast that asks which movies are well worth watching and deserve to be remembered for all time. I'm your host, David Oscar, and I'm joined by someone who I would class as the other half of my buddy cop duo, but that would suggest he's not the one committing the crimes. It's Craig McDonald. Hello, Craig.
Seriously, what the hell is wrong with you?
Well, again, I'll go back to your New Year's resolution of you want to be less nice. So.
Yeah, I think you've misconstrued the idea of meanness versus criminality.
Illegal activities.
Yeah, I feel like I can be strict on you without like breaking the law.
Craig, how are you feeling anyway? How are you doing?
Oh, it's fine until you suggested I'm a criminal. Like,
there's no going back on that now. So yeah, we best move on.
yeah, you better had.
Right, so over to those who are joining us this week. So first up, it is a previous guest. He is a film journalist and editor. It is Paul Klein. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
So, Paul, the last time you joined us, it was quite a while ago, where we were actually recapping the films we had discussed for half of last year. So, thank you very much for talking through not just one film, but a few films that we'd been...
Yeah, most of them were good.
Yeah, we were pretty lucky at that stage. So, yeah, how have you been over the past few months? I know you've been quite busy with like interviews and stuff like that, like press junkets and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate and, working, and then Christmas came and not working, just eating my weight at the time in other foods, and I'm double the size. Trying to catch up on films that I haven't watched as well, because there's a lot of them, and I put things off until the last minute. Still haven't seen Tar. Too much discourse. Can't be bothered. I'll wait till the discourse dies down, and then I'll give it a look.
That was like me with Black Adam of all things.
I saw that the day it came out. I was like, this is like the most rich tea biscuit film I've ever seen. It's like.
I would love that on a poster. I would love to see like the Rock's reaction to
film,
that.
Paul Klein film.
Yeah.
No, it's like not awful, and it's not good. It's just alright. It's like, yeah, I watched that, and there were some bits where I went, oh, and there were some bits where I was like, dumb. The hierarchy did shift, as Dwayne Johnson promised.
Oh god, don't even go there. So. Well, I'm not sure whether you'll suggest Dwayne The Rock Johnson for this one, but as we're talking about a sort of buddy cop film today, we wanted to ask our guests, what actor would you choose to play your crime-solving partner? So, Paul, who comes to mind when you think of this question?
See, I was thinking about this. I think you need, like, you can't have two people who are too similar, because that'd be boring. And I'm quite a grumpy, low-energy guy, so I was thinking I'd need someone like Anna Kendrick. And she can be, so, like I'm the Tommy Lee Jones, and she can be the Will Smith doing shtick, and I can just sort of stare at her disapprovingly. So I'm thinking Anna Kendrick. She can do all the heavy lifting comedy-wise, and I can just sort of sit down and do very little. Yeah, I'm the straight man. I'm Tommy Lee Jones in Men in Black, and then she's the one that's like, oh, I'm doing loads of riffs, and I'm just there like,
You're just putting up with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, we can't wait to talk more about buddy cop movies with today's choice with you, Paul. On to our next guest. It is his first time joining us on Well Good Movies. It is video game journalist Aaron Potter. Hello, Aaron.
Hello, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
No problem. Yeah, it's great to have you on. So, Aaron, tell us all about yourself. What do you do for work, and what sort of encapsulates you as a film fan and a cinema goer?
Yeah, so I'm like you said, I'm primarily a video game journalist, but I have dabbled in the dark arts of film journalism all the time. I think Paul knows exactly what I'm talking about. But no, primarily video games. You probably have read me places like Den of Geek, Games Radar, Wired, Kotaku back in the day. But also some pretty cool places in terms of, trying to find any excuse to talk about film, really. There's this really cool independent magazine called On Screen, which I would urge anybody to check out. They're really passionate. But in terms of my film viewing history, how can you not like film? The cinema is a palace. It's the place you go to when you want to escape without sounding too cheesy or like Nicole Kidman in those AMC adverts the US audience are always banging on about. But I grew up in the generation where you would go to Cineworld and there was this really freaky advert. Don't know if anybody else remembers it, where a digital lady jumps out the screen, picks up someone's phone, and then crushes it and throws it in the bin. And it was,
wow.
Turn your phone off. Does that ring any bells for anybody, or have I imagined that?
I'm a poor man. I used to go to View, where we just had the Orange Wednesday adverts with whichever celebrity they could blackmail into pretending they care.
Was that in the boardroom? Yeah, and sometimes they would have Darth Vader turn up.
Darth Vader, or there was one where it was Sean Astin, and the joke was he gets off the chair and he's really short because he's a hobbit.
Yeah, I remember that.
There was a few good ones. There was a good one on a bus with Dennis Hopper.
Wasn't there one with Steven Seagal as well? And obviously, getting Steven Seagal to do anything is just an absolute nightmare. So I don't envy them there. Yeah.
Probably. I worked in a cinema for years as well, and so that it's not much of an escape for me. It's more like going back to the trenches of Vietnam.
I was going to say, if you're going to play the poor man card, David and I used to go to Showcase until we finally got Odeon Limitless membership.
Okay, so you guys are going to have to explain to me what the hierarchy of the cinema chains is here, because from my perspective, Cineworld is budget.
So it's a war between Odeon and Cineworld for top.
Oh, wow.
But you're talking Everyman and stuff like that as well, though.
Because then you got Curzon, which is hoo-hoo.
Yeah, but there are loads of cinemas who are just we're not going to deal with the mainstream. We don't care if we don't take.
And I'm not just saying that because I was on their podcast. Cheers, guys. Cheers for having me. Lovely time.
I'll stand up for Everyman any day of the week.
No, Everyman's a good. Curzon's a good. I worked in Odeon for 10 years in two different branches. So whenever people are I love Odeon, I'm like, I hate you.
Yeah, I think it just depends. It depends where you are, I think, isn't it? Because isn't the Bristol one they only show 2 films a day and stuff? And somebody said to me oh, it's really old and stuff. But again, whereas Craig's talking about the Showcase that we sort of grew up near, that has not changed in about 20, 25 years, and it's the same carpet and everything like that. So it just depends on whether they've invested in that cinema, I guess.
I worked in one that had an IMAX screen for a couple of years, and it was okay. It was pretty good. And then I moved to and that was 12 screens. And then I moved to a 6-screen one, and it was a really old listed building, and it was the Jim Carrey film The Majestic. It was it looked like because it used to be a theater, and honestly, it was just every single thing. It was stained glass. It was so old. It was just such an old build.
Stained glass in a cinema.
Oh yeah, there was it was a nice building, but obviously, just it was not built to be a cinema. So the stock rooms were on the other side of the building to where you wanted to put the stock, and you'd have to carry 6 massive things full of sweets. And by the end of a shift, I was like,
you were hench from all the carrying by the sounds of it.
Well, do you know what? I would have been if I wasn't also eating loads of popcorn and drinking loads of fizzy drinks, which I shouldn't have been doing. What are they going to do? I haven't worked there for 3 years, but oh god.
Same question to you as to Paul. If you had to choose an actor to play your crime-solving partner, who would it be?
So I kind of, again, with the whole buddy cop thing, you have to sort of play the opposites off each other, right? So, and I'm a pretty laid back, easygoing person. I don't think I'd call myself a grump as Paul did, but that's why I went for a grump, arguably the ultimate grump. And he's been in the news recently. It is the one and only Harrison Ford, because I just think he'd be sleepwalking his way through the entire investigation, which might not be ideal for, solving a crime or a murder, but he wouldn't know where he is. Everything would freak him out. I'd get David Blaine to come and do tricks at him whenever he was bored, just to keep him awake, like that famous clip I love so much. So yeah, even though he starred in a movie called Blade Runner, where he wasn't particularly very good at blade running, I think Harrison Ford would be a right laugh.
Don't get in a plane with him. For the love of God, don't get in a plane with him. He's a great pilot, but he can't land them very well.
I recently got on a plane with Gerard Butler, and I quite enjoyed my time, I'll have you know.
Oh, okay.
Like the thing I think of when I think of grumpy Harrison Ford is mainly Mark Hamill's impression of Harrison Ford. I just love when he's just like, I don't sound like that, and it's just like, this is so great. So like that probably would be a good buddy cop thing there. So I don't know how much of a Mark Hamill you are, Aaron, but Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford would make a good buddy cop duo.
I was just going to say, I also remember that clip of Han Solo in the Force Awakens, where he's like, "That's not how the Force works."
Yeah.
I just imagine interactions like that.
That is the most animated he had been in a film for about 15 years. And it was because he knew that he was getting killed off. And he could taste the time off
taste
from
the
Star
paycheck.
Wars.
Well, we can't wait to talk to you guys all about today's film. But yeah, it's going to be a fun one. And yeah, for anyone out there who's listening right now as well, do remember to leave us a review and interact with us wherever you can on the likes of social media, Instagram and Twitter. You can find us at Well Good Movies or where you're listening to this podcast, whether that be somewhere like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It all really helps the podcast grow and means we can see what you guys want to hear and what you enjoy the most. But now on with the show. So let's kick off things with today's film. So Craig, for those who didn't catch our last episode, check it out if you haven't. Or for those who need a reminder, what is it we're discussing today and what led us here today?
So after we were tasked with watching the film Seven, which has many genres that we still haven't actually quite agreed on, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole again. I made David put his hand in a box several times, and he had no idea what it was that he was feeling. He has since had to remove half of that episode because it sounded too graphic. But in the end, it was Ed who was able to decipher most what's in the box, and he got us to talk about the 1998 buddy cop film of Rush Hour.
Detective James Carter loved his job until he got a partner.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Now, the fastest hands in the East
Do it again.
team up with the biggest mouth in the West.
Which one of y'all kicked me?
Jackie Chan. Bitch boy. Chris Tucker.
Ever touch a black man's radio, boy?
Rush Hour. Rated PG-13.
Yep, we'll be talking all about Rush Hour, as well as asking whether it deserves the honor of a place in our movie vault, our vault that encapsulates memorable movies for all time. For those who don't know, Rush Hour was released in 1998. It stars Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan, directed by Brett Ratner. We're back in territory we were in last time where we had mentioned Kevin Spacey. So this was written by Jim Koff and Ross Lamanna. The soundtrack is by Lilo Schriffin. Cinematography by Adam Greenberg and edited by Adam Helfrich. The plot summary is when the 11-year-old daughter of the Chinese consul in Los Angeles, Han, is kidnapped in broad daylight, the desperate father insists on summoning his old friend and Hong Kong police ace detective, Inspector Lee, to assist the FBI in the investigation. However, as the Bureau is far from keen on allowing the newcomer to get in their way, they pair him up with the motor-mouthed LAPD detective James Carter to watch over him. Eventually, the mismatched duo of reluctant partners team up to solve the mystery before the FBI. The film also stars Rex Linn, Elizabeth Pena, Chris Penn, Ken Leung, Tom Wilkinson, Ji Ma, Mark Rolston, Philip Baker Hall, and Julia Hisu. Guys, what is your sort of like memories and immediate feelings when we kind of like mentioned Rush Hour is the film we'd be discussing? Aaron, did you have any kind of like immediate thoughts on talking about this film, and do you have any sort of memories of previously watching it or experiencing it?
Yeah, of course. How can you grow up in the late 90s, early 2000s and not come across I was going to say the miracle of Rush Hour then. Let's not evangelize this movie. I mean, it is pretty good. No, my memories of this film, we talked about this prior to me coming on, but Rush Hour 2 for me is the sort of apex of this trilogy. I don't know if that is the generally accepted consensus. I guess we'll find out on this podcast a bit later on. But I mean, Rush Hour, the original, still a great film. It's definitely the one I haven't watched. It's the one I've watched the least out of the three. So in a way, having this discussion was a good way to revisit it. And rewatching it now, it's still a really good time. I think the one memory I do have is that on the playground at school. Obviously, we probably shouldn't have been watching action movies of this caliber so young, but I do have a distinct memory of kids on the playground sort of doing the gun turn move that they repeatedly do throughout the movie, where you disarm someone from their gun and then turn it back on them within, I don't know, one sweeping maneuver. Whenever you're playing like battles or military men or whatever, that was definitely something we did as kids. And yeah, I just remember really liking this film. I think I don't know whether it is because I've seen it the least. It's kind of like it sets a lot of the groundwork for future movies, but having said that, it definitely stands in its own right, and definitely got some fond memories watching.
Paul, what about yourself?
I do remember I have seen all three, and they all sort of merge into one in my head. So because I remember seeing them when I was like, I don't know, when did the third one come out? Like 2007. So that was probably around the time that I saw them all because everyone was talking about it. And I do remember I found them funny. I think for me, it was more I like Jackie Chan doing Jackie Chan stuff than the plot. So that's why I don't remember the plots, because I'm like, I don't know. So someone get kidnapped. Second one, I don't know. Someone's death threat, maybe, I don't know. They go to, I know that the third one has Roman Polanski in it. And there's a joke about body searches, and it's like, that's unfortunate. But we've
already mentioned Brett Ratner and Kevin Spacey. I think this episode's about to implode.
Yeah, exactly. I just remember. Yeah, I just remember the fights and stuff, and that there was a stand-up comedian that used to do a bit about Jackie Chan and how he's always saying that he doesn't want to get into fights in films, and then like manages to walk into a place where there's loads of bad guys. And every time he's hitting someone, he's like, I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight. I just want to be your friend.
I know exactly.
And that's all I can remember. That's all I can remember, really. And yeah, I mean, they may as well have just called the character Detective Jackie Chan. Like he and, Detective Chris Tucker, they're not really acting. They're playing themselves. But revisiting it, I was a bit like, this is so 90s. This is so... You want to see where America was in the 90s? This is it.
And kind of like movies in a way as well. That's why I always find it interesting when you watch stuff from like the 80s or 90s. And if you watch something like this now, like a buddy cop thing, it might be like a Netflix original or something like that. Or it might be made on a lower budget and it's filmed digitally. And I guess there has been quite a few like examples recently where they've sort of done that. What was the one with Dave Bautista and what's his name, the guy from Eternals, and they had that
Stuber.
That's it. Yes, yeah. So yeah, Stuber. So again, back to my original point anyway. So yeah, you've had films like Stuber, etc., but there just seems to be, I don't know, something about it in which like they cut more corners and it seems like it's made for kind of streaming or it's like shot digitally. Whereas again, you watch something like this and you're like, oh, this is an actual movie. It looks similar to, like blockbusters in some way. And I think it was interesting because when I was like looking up like the stats and stuff like that, it was like the cinematographer did work on things like Terminator and stuff like that. And I'm like, how crazy is that to think of now? There's, somebody who's like the cinematographer on, something like Terminator has also worked then on like Rush Hour, whereas I'm not sure if that would happen as much now.
Sorry, just to clarify, did you watch this film and literally go, wow, this looks like a movie? Because if so, you are the most easy to please reviewer I've ever met in my life.
I'm done, guys. That's my review. No, but it is the guy who like was cinematographer. He did Terminator 2, Ghost, the first Terminator. But it's just straight again. It's that element I just find with more like older movies in which
the guy who shot Die Hard directed the second Lara Croft film.
Yeah, there's a bit more of a connection there. Either way, what I'm saying is like older 90s films and stuff, they have that filmic quality because obviously it's filmed on film, like things which are shot digitally now, I think then, like we were saying before, have a quality that makes it feel like a TV special or something like that. So Craig, don't put your hand on your head because I'm making a point about how something looks like a film compared to a television streaming movie. That's what I'm saying. So
the magic of movies.
Yeah, but half of this is literally going to just be like a technology sort of age thing. We are in 2023 talking about this, like what, 25 years? Not 20. Yeah, 25 years later.
But that's why I find, it's different when you talk about films from like the 90s and stuff like that. There always seems to be a kind of different approach in the way that they're made and stuff like that, budget, all that kind of stuff.
David, I'm 100% with you. This looks like a movie, all right? It's got that warmth of film. The effects are practical. There's people. There's stuntmen hitting actual things, and they're on location.
Jackie Chan knocking himself out every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But also, when you look at similar films, that also like backs this up in terms of like, obviously this had several sequels, and also when you look at things like Jackie Chan, to me, was kind of like what The Rock might be to some people now in terms like he was that star, like also like Jim Carrey and like Jim Carrey in blank, it was like Jackie Chan in this film. So
he was a movie star, yeah.
So here I was reminded of Shanghai Noon and Shanghai Nights when I was looking at the similar films. I was like, oh, I forgot about those. But again, it was just the idea of like, oh, it's the latest Jackie Chan film. What's going on here?
Well, the problem is that Jackie Chan, obviously, it's not his fault, but obviously English is not his. I think it's Cantonese he speaks natively. He also speaks Mandarin, I believe. So obviously English is like a third language. So he's not great with dialogue. So you have to team him up with someone who's good with dialogue. So Chris Tucker makes sense. Owen Wilson's a weird one because Owen Wilson is also not great with dialogue. He's like really laid back. So you've got this high energy guy and then just this laid back guy like, wow.
It does seem there was like this stretch of a period between the mid-90s and the early 2000s where movie producers were like, who can we team Jackie Chan up with next? Steve Coogan, Around the World in 80 Days. Get him in that. Poor Jackie Chan. He's worked with some talented people, of course, but yeah.
It is one of those ones that they never got the Dwayne Johnson, Kevin Hart double act of, oh, that works. He never found his Kevin Hart.
To be fair, given how many sequels Rush Hour ended up getting, I feel like the Chris Tucker probably is like the closest to being successful.
Where is Chris Tucker these days?
I don't know. I honestly don't care. I don't like him.
I'm sure we're going to talk about like this later on potentially, but I'll bring it up now. Like, can we just, acknowledge the fact that Rush Hour 2 and Rush Hour 3, I don't know, there's like a 10-year time difference between them. Those are the back-to-back films that Chris Tucker did. He did nothing else in between. And that's always why when Rush Hour 4 and prospects of that happening actually gets brought up, I'm like, no, because Chris Tucker's done stuff since and it wouldn't feel the same.
He's done like 2 films since.
Silver Linings Playbook got in the way, is what I'm saying.
Oh my God. Oh God.
It'd be the similar vibes of when, redoing Bill and Ted in the sense of, because Keanu Reeves obviously went off and did a lot of stuff, but then, Jackie Chan hasn't really been, in film all that much either recently. So
that's because he's Chris really Tucker old. You can't keep knocking yourself out. That's what I remember about the behind the scenes was they were like, oh, Jackie Chan did a stunt and a light fixture fell on his head. And it's like, get a stunt double.
What was that film that was described or almost marketed as Jackie Chan, but it's Taken? And his daughter may or may not have died.
The Foreigner.
That was it, yeah. What a slog of a film.
I love Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan Adventures is one of the great cartoons of my childhood.
Now you're talking.
Yeah, Jackie Chan Adventures was the one. The Talismans, Uncle Shop.
I'm still waiting for the 4K Blu-ray collection of Jackie Chan Adventures. Make it happen, people.
I want all the talismans. I remember
Exactly.
you could get a magazine with each talisman, and I never did, and I wish I did. I want them.
Thanks to that series, like, the like, oh, it's the year of the tiger, and the kind of like Chinese animals of the years, etc. But oh wow, there it is. Jackie Chan Adventures. Oh, is it the magazine?
It's the magazine. I've got the
Oh,
container
wow.
it all came in as well. My God, we are so far from Rush Hour at this point. But Jackie Chan Adventures.
Jackie Chan's a bit like Arnold Schwarzenegger, where it's like he can't actually, like, there are some action guys who are action guys, but they can act. Like Stallone's an action guy, but he can actually act. He's actually a very good actor. But Jackie Chan just can't act. Like, love him as I do. In the Police Story movies, he's just called like Jackie Chan. Like, he's literally called like Detective Jackie Chan. It's like, oh, for God's sake.
But that's what's interesting in that time period again, is that he was also, because as you see it go along, it was like, it's like you guys said earlier, like who can we pair him up with? But then also I think his career kind of like fizzled out when it was kind of like, no, he can like hold this up himself. And he had like the tuxedo, was it? And it was just like, he almost became like what, again, The Rock is now, in terms of being like, yes, he can hold up this like entire film. And
I
it
love
just
the
becomes
tuxedo.
a film.
It's so good.
But it's not because of him. It's not his fault, but it's just the idea of like Jackie Chan in, like insert blank crazy film summary. Which just doesn't work, I guess, as much. And I guess that's where we've come away a bit more from like movie stars and those kind of ideas. But it's almost as well like it within that time period, they were also doing films which like, right, we couldn't get these two before, so let's do it now. So do you guys remember I Spy? It was like Eddie Murphy and Owen Wilson, and it was almost as if they were like, oh, well, we couldn't have Eddie Murphy in that Rush Hour film, so let's have him with the guy who was in Shanghai Nights, and yeah, that'll be the same thing.
I think that film had Famke Janssen in it as well.
That's it, yeah.
There's a scene where Owen Wilson's like spying on her through glasses that lets him see behind his head. Oh, early 2000s, man. Wild.
Exactly. It's a lot of typical stuff to that time. So, do you guys have any other feelings of like just generally that kind of like buddy cop sort of genre, or sort of like crime comedy sort of films? Aaron, do you have any other sort of experiences of any others that sort of make you like this kind of genre, or was this Rush Hour your only kind of experience of that kind of world?
Oh, yeah, of course, man. Like buddy cop is like a tent pole of shall I say like old Hollywood sort of, the ethos, right? And as you said, like it's very rare that a studio will want to put enough money behind a buddy cop to actually like put it in a cinema and see if it does well. I think the most recent example of a really good buddy cop comedy that underperformed was something I'm sure all of you will have seen, which is Shane Black's The Nice Guys. Just an absolute blast of a film. So good. Ryan Gosling actually emotes in that movie, which is like, oh my God, this guy can act, rather than just stand there like a pretty piece of cardboard. So it gets points for that.
Shane Black's like the king of the buddy cop genre.
Sure.
True, yeah. That film looks like a film, I'll say. I'll give it that credit as well.
I swear to God, David.
Quote of the day, that film looks like a film. Was it shot on film? Then it looks like a film. But yeah, other than that, I mean, like I said it before, Rush Hour 2 is kind of like a modern classic for me. You guys might hate me for it. You might not know what happens, but because you get those one-liners, I think the chemistry, quote unquote, between Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker has built up by that point. And we haven't mentioned yet that with the Rush Hour movies, like, I find the bloopers. Remember bloopers at the end of credits?
Bloopers are the best bits of the movies.
Well, exactly. But I'm
trying not to say it. I'm not like, it makes it a film.
It makes it a film. It does. I'd say like they're just as memorable as the movie itself, and maybe that is doing the actual movie a disservice. But you don't really get into this stuff for the plot. So, like, the amount of times
answering his phone in the middle of a take is quite funny.
That is funny.
I just remember that one where he's like, "Yeah, man, I'm making a film."
And with Jackie Chan, and then Jackie Chan picks up the phone and he's like, "You're wasting all of our film. We're trying to work here." But honestly, me and my best friend growing up, would quote all the time the bit where guy at the end of the second movie gets launched from a building. Chris Tucker looks down. Damn, he's not going to be in Rush Hour 3. And he was right. He wasn't in Rush Hour 3, guys.
Aaron, you were saying there about like, in terms of like how people perceive which ones are the best. Interestingly, I think on IMDb, the first Rush Hour has a 7 as its average score, 7 out of 10. Rush Hour 2 actually has 6.6, and Rush Hour 3 has 6.2, which I was surprised about because, again, like, like you guys, I remember growing up with these films and kind of seeing them on television and then being in the background, maybe sitting down and watching them. But like Paul as well, it kind of turned into one film in my head. But I do always remember people saying Rush Hour 2 as like the go-to. That was people's favorite. So yeah, I'm surprised that that one is rated lower.
I'd also add, I've been going through this afternoon a lot of lists of what people considered like the top 10 or the top 25 buddy cop movies. And I think across the list I saw, Rush Hour 3 is not mentioned at all. Rush Hour itself is mentioned like once or twice. Rush Hour 2 gets like 6 different mentions across these lists. So I would also say that while the sort of, with IMDb, it's hard to say considering that I can't imagine that both films have the same amount of reviews, nor do they necessarily have the same people reviewing the films across every single one. So I think an amalgamation site like that, I think, is sort of hard to get like the basis of, and I think you have to sort of look at how it's evaluated in other ways.
This will sound silly now, but I think the reason why Rush Hour 2 tends to stick out is because Rush Hour and Rush Hour 3 are very much connected. Like Soo Young appears in both, played by different actors, whereas Rush Hour 2 is just, it's the thing we don't get in movies anymore because everything's serialized. It's the adventure of the week, you know, and it has a beginning, middle, and end. And
do they go? The second one, they go to China, don't they? They go to Hong Kong.
They do.
They're in Hong Kong, yeah.
Because that was the thing. Is that it's like he's out of his depth in LA, and then in the second one, it's like he's in his element in Hong Kong, but Chris Tucker doesn't understand the toilets.
And then third one is like, we're
Paris.
in LA again. Oh yeah, they do go to Paris. Yeah,
we gotta go Paris. Neither of them are French. Let's just go Paris.
It'd be interesting where they went then if they do make, you know, that speculated fourth film, which is kind of turned into like Bad Boys in the sense of like, you know, will it happen? It's been talked about for years, etc. And I'm like, I'm not sure if, again, like Jackie Chan, and as we've mentioned,
they wind up in North Korea and they've got to fight their way out.
I was going to say it's either that or they just do what Adam Sandler does and they just go, where do we want to go on holiday, guys? I know, we'll set the film here.
I would watch a Rush Hour 4 if it, or, you know, if they go to Russia and it's Russia Hour. They call it Russia
Hour.
And,
Russia Hour. Russia Hour sounds like one of those parodies of buddy cop movies you'd see at the end of 22 Jump Street, where they have that montage cut. They could just like slot it in there. It's like a cheeky wink and a nod to the fans. Like, yeah.
I think that's why Rush Hour 2 stands out in some ways as well, though, because it's a bit like Too Fast, Too Furious. It's just the element of like, not just necessarily the number 2, but it's something about it which you're like, oh, Rush Hour. And it's just like, maybe Rush Hour 2 is almost like the Tokyo Drift of, you know, the buddy cop films in which people are like, you know what, you know, people give this film a hard time, or I actually really enjoy that one, or I actually have like really fond memories of it. And maybe it's something just about the Rush Hour 2, which just kind of sounds like Rush Hour 3 just doesn't roll off the tongue as much, I think.
Obviously, we know it's called Rush Hour, but do we know what this film's working title was? Like, because Rush Hour doesn't really tell you anything about.
Probably it just was shit places as untitled Jackie Chan buddy cop film.
Not to go harp on about David's, this is how you know it's a film point again, but how you know it's a film is when they do mention the name of the film in the film. I do get a kick out of that.
You do the Peter Griffin thing of like,
yeah.
Paul, you said earlier that they kind of blend together for you in your head. So how has it changed now, rewatching, you know, Rush Hour and sort of revisiting it? What has sort of changed in your head about sort of going back to it?
No, I mean, I hate when people go, oh, you couldn't make it these days, because it's like, well, no, it already got made. Obviously, you can't make it now. But like, rewatching it, I was like, oh, this is very 90s. You know, and I let a lot of stuff in film slide where I'm like, it was the 60s. You were allowed to make those jokes. And I was watching it going, were we that casual about the N-word?
Were
we that? Because there's like a whole scene where it's dropped a lot. Like, is that not like, and it's like a 12 film as well. It's like, is it like rated 12? And you're like,
I mean, it was okay when Chris Tucker was using it because appropriation, but obviously when it's the mistranslation and Jackie Chan starts saying it, that's when I went a bit, oh no.
Also, because like he says it once, and you're like, oh, okay, that the joke is he doesn't know that that's offensive, but he says it like 10 times,
quite brazenly, yeah.
And I was a bit like,
good thing they left that out of the blooper reel, I must say.
And I was a bit like, are you allowed to use the, like, it's a slur though. It's like, you know, calling someone a bitch. Like, are you allowed to do that in a film? all right, so 12. That's still aimed at families. Quite, like, it'd be like there was a scene in like Shang-Chi where he started dropping the N-word randomly. You're like,
That's how much things have changed, isn't it? Like the fact that, there's the poo thing in Simpsons that it took all the way until that moment to be like, actually, should, a white person be voicing this character? And, the fact that it took all this time for actors of that ethnicity to voice those characters and stuff is crazy when you look at it. It's like, oh, right, last started in like 2018. Like, what? The Simpsons recast Dr. Hibbert in like 2020? It's crazy to think about stuff like that and how long it took. And what I find even more crazy is that, again, when you think about it in terms of using the N-word, etc., you think, okay, that's something that, did take quite a while for that to be, made clear that this is not acceptable. But then even on with Chris Tucker, the amount of times that he's like, hey, Oriental chicken and stuff like that, like he's calling people like Chinese dishes and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh God, this, so even like the Asian slurs and phrases have not aged well at all.
Opportunities racist. Like the film, although it's directed by a white man, which is even worse. You just got this white man approving a script where it's like, yeah, all Asian people are named after dishes and all the people are called N-words. And it's like...
But apart from that, was there anything else that sort of stood out to you in terms of the action or the comedy?
Well, just watching Jackie Chan do Jackie Chan stuff is enjoyable. And, I think when I was watching Shang-Chi and I was just watching it going, oh man, I love Jackie Chan films. Like what, like the bit where he's on the bus in Shang-Chi, I was like, oh, this is such a Jackie Chan fight scene. And I was so into it. I think he should get
all that CG. It made it look like a Jackie Chan fight scene. Yeah.
But like, I would love Jackie Chan to be in Shang-Chi too. I want him to show up. But like, it is that kind of thing of like the timing of the fights, and they don't cut too much nowadays. Action is cut loads, and I was just thinking, like, surprised he never got put in an Expendables. I mean, I know that they have Jet Li, so maybe they were like, well, we've got one, it's fine. But yeah, I always thought, oh, he'd have been a great addition. But yeah, I miss watching his action stuff. It made me want to go back and rewatch the other stuff he'd done.
There is an insane bit, speaking about Jackie Chan's like flexibility and skill, in Rush Hour 2 where he slides under like a counter. Like
I remember that.
And I know this because, again, the blooper reels, they show like he does it like multiple times, and one time he gets stuck. They're like, are you okay? He gets up, he's like, Jackie, always okay. And I'm like, you're my hero, Jackie Chan.
Him and Tom Cruise are in a mission to kill themselves in a film.
But yeah, when you look at his recent stuff, it is just like, so many just random films and things that are like, sort of straight to streaming and very like low budget kind of movies, almost in some ways as if like what Nick Cage is doing in some ways now. But as you said, Paul, there's just so much fun to the type of action that he does and the style. Like the vase scene is like a great example of that. And apparently that was reshot to add more Jackie Chan. So test screenings, they were like, we want more Jackie Chan. So like they added more, and that was something that they added. So it's just the whole, like the fact that he keeps flipping back and forth, and you've established that he's like, oh, I want to protect my heritage, but then it's just the wonderful moment in which it just gets shot, and you're like, yep, that's what we've all been building to. It was a great comic moment, I thought.
I will say, I think the film makes it very obvious that test screenings were just like, we want more Jackie Chan antics. Because the thing that sort of surprised me about the film, because transparency, I hadn't actually watched Rush Hour until like last night. I was one of those people who was able to live through the 90s and avoid it. The thing that actually surprised me was that there aren't as many sort of bonding scenes between the two as you'd expect. I think the only major one we really get is the sort of dancing along to the like war, what is it good for? And that's the only scene I was aware of, because it's used as a clip often on a Yu-Gi-Oh card review show I watch every now and then. So it's only really that bonding moment, and then sort of things go to pot, and then they sort of start going their separate ways, and they come back together, and it's the entire discussion on the plane, which I was actually just surprised that they don't really spend much time bonding these guys as we actually make a good team, which is also why I can imagine Rush Hour 2 being better, because at that point you've established them as a good team, and now you actually just see them just doing weird things. And also, doesn't that film have like a karaoke scene of Chris Tucker singing?
Michael Jackson, yeah.
Yeah.
Less said about. Well, I mean, he dances Michael Jackson in this movie, doesn't he? It's like one of the first things you see him do when he shoots the C4.
Oh, yeah, what an odd scene.
Yeah, I think they were really good friends in real life, Chris Tucker and MJ. Take that for what it's worth.
So, Aaron, is your opinion then still that you prefer Rush Hour 2 from now revisiting Rush Hour? Has your opinion changed much? Is it still like gone up in your estimations, gone down?
Well, it's interesting that Craig says that he's Rush Hour. He only watched it last night and he hasn't seen any of the others, because it was actually watching the original Rush Hour yesterday that I was kind of like, okay, Rush Hour 2 does actually repeat a lot of the same beats as the first movie, except it's set in Hong Kong, right down to the fact that I think is the actor's Clifton Powell's character, which is Chris Tucker's cousin. He goes into the back. There's a poker room in the second movie. Don Cheadle plays an acquaintance of Chris Tucker, and he has a poker game happening in the back of like a restaurant. So
That's
it's
just
kind
comedy
of like
sequels. We just do the joke again, but in a different environment.
but better. Like I'm not much better, but So to answer your question, David, I think Rush Hour 2 will always have a special place in my heart just because of how fun it is, and you've got Jackie Chan fighting with a laptop in that movie. And
have you ever seen Who Am I?
I have, yeah.
Jackie Chan gets amnesia and he fights people while wearing clogs. He's wearing wooden clogs that hurt his feet, and he has to fight people in an alley. It's brilliant.
Jackie Chan can fight anyone with anything.
Oh, it's amazing.
We're clear, yeah.
That shows the diversity of Jackie Chan that we've talked about. Jackie Chan Adventures and this Amnesia film in the same like 10 minutes.
I always find it interesting that in Jackie Chan Adventures, Jackie Chan isn't voiced by Jackie Chan. He just appears at the end to answer like questions.
It's so random.
And it's weird how, I guess you didn't have Brendan Fraser in the Mummy cartoon, I assume, either, but how, again, that kind of like 90s famous film was made into an animated series, and now you've got Brendan Fraser's up for an Oscar and everything like that. So I don't know, maybe Jackie Chan's time is coming. Maybe he's had the animated series. He was a big thing in the 90s, and maybe he will have his Oscar nominated performance. Maybe he'll see Michelle Yeoh getting hers and be like, I should have taken that role.
I think that was The Foreigner. Like, as crazy as that sounds, because I don't remember him doing too much action.
No, he does a bit
film.
more acting than action.
Yeah, it's mainly close-ups of him almost crying, from what I remember, and what a boring film, though.
He's not great.
That's the difference with Michelle Yeoh, I suppose, is the difference of just like someone who does martial arts and is an actor as well. Whereas again, I do class him as just mainly a martial arts action man rather than an actor per se. Because like you said, he's never really doing like a performance. He is playing himself a lot of the time.
But he does it so well, and nobody else.
He does do it well.
Jackie
That is
Chan.
the thing. He's he's like the Charlie Chaplin of throwing hands.
I always find it interesting because in his later years, Jackie Chan's also done a lot of like voiceover work and animation, like Kung Fu Panda and the Lego Ninjago movie and stuff. And it reminds me of something that Antonio Banderas was saying the other day when he was talking about Puss in Boots. Like when he originally tried breaking into Hollywood, everybody told him that his accent was the thing that would prevent him from getting roles, that would hold him back. And then you flash forward years later and you become so recognizable that you're being cast and hired based on the sound of your voice. And I imagine the same is true for Jackie Chan, because whether the man can act or not, when it's Jackie Chan and when it isn't.
Yeah, because I think in this film apparently as well, it was like where he's been dubbed over in the past, Brett Ratner was like, no, let's not do that here, because we just want to get that authenticity from the character, and they'll like add to the the
realism.
Exactly, yeah. But the fact that we want the real Jackie Chan, which I guess people wanted because they wanted to see, more scenes with him. But yeah, I think that, again, like Paul, the kind of films are all like blurred together. And I think from what I remember of Rush Hour 2, I do remember it as a kind of more like standout, like here are the moments, and maybe because it is set in Hong Kong, and I guess a sequel kind of always like ups the ante in that way. But here I could definitely see it as that kind of like beginning film that they're kind of like, establishing the relationship and the between them. But when I watched the trailer in preparation, I was like, oh, I did get that vibe of like, oh, there's going to be a lot of dated jokes here. There's going to be like a lot of like goofy humor. I'm not sure if the story is going to be like, the best thing about it or anything like that. But I was pleasantly surprised, like them rewatching it, that I was like, okay, no, this does still have a level of kind of like seriousness or maturity to it. Granted, yes, those jokes are still very inappropriate, but it wasn't kind of like in your face or anything like that. I didn't find that there was a level of restraint I felt with this film, which again, I think now if they were making it, they would feel the need to kind of go overboard, like something like Stuber, in which they're like, oh, look how funny, you know, Dave Bautista is, look how funny, you know, Kumail Nanjiani is. It's very much like playing up those characters, whereas here I felt it was a bit more reserved, maybe because, again, Chris Tucker does a lot more like improvisation and stuff like that.
Well, I was just going to say, I guess in my head, even though I guess it kind of is just by nature of Chris Tucker being in it, you would call it like an action comedy, right? If not a buddy cop, it is going for humor, I guess, but. And like it does come from that era where I made a list of like Chris Tucker one-liners from this movie that did make me have like a little okay, that was funny. And I won't quote all of them because not all of them are appropriate, but there's something about like Chris Tucker there's a moment right at the end where he kills the like main henchman character. I don't think it's a great one-liner, but he sells it, which is that wipe yourself off, you're dead. Like, and I was like,
That's the line I was hoping you'd mention. That's the only line that actually made me laugh from Chris Tucker, believe it or not.
He won, really?
What can I say? I must be dead inside.
Okay, I said I wasn't going to do this, but there's one where they visit the informant in prison, and he's like, kiss my ass. And then Chris Tucker says, you know, Clive, it would take me all day to kiss your ass. Like, and it's just like little jabs like that. And I was like, that's pretty good.
It's the 90s where fat jokes were okay. It was the era of yo mama jokes. It was like,
we're dealing at that maturity level. Yeah.
He definitely embraces that kind of like yo mama kind of like humor, and just the one that kind of I found was quite funny, and I think that is in the trailers when they're negotiating. And he's just like, I want $50 million. And he's just like, $50 million? Like, who have you got there? And I think even in the bloopers, it shows like him saying that line over and over again with different names.
Several times.
You want any fives with that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the way he's even doing that, like 10s and 50s. Yeah, okay. So I think, again, his charisma and stuff does sell a lot of what is happening, which might have not necessarily been funny just written down or in the script. And even just like the way when he's leaving like the LAPD office, when he's like, yeah, I got this big job and everything like that. I think the fact that, you know, obviously he's like very precious about his car. And then like when he comes back and Jackie Chan, like the steering wheel's gone, he's like, and when he goes to the house, when he's inside the pickup truck, that made me laugh as well. It's just when he's kind of like, yeah, you know, you cool, man. Thanks for dropping me off here, etc. It was just something about that kind of like the buddy cop element there, I suppose, of him being like the sort of frustrated cop who's like angry and annoyed at his partner.
With those sort of things, crime comedies or crime action films, it's usually, the plot's usually just a thin hanger to hang jokes on. So it's like, the plot, it's always like someone got abducted by bad guys. It doesn't matter. What matters is we got these two guys, and one of them's really good at beating people up, and the other one's really good at shouting. Where can we put them where one can punch and one can shout? A prison. All right, we'll put them in a prison. Where else? A bar. All right, put them in a bar. Where else? An apartment building. You know, it's that kind of thing of like, you know, the plot doesn't matter half as much as, we got these two guys. One's good at this, one's good at that.
I will say one thing that this first movie I sort of appreciate. We've talked a lot about how not every joke's aged well. A couple of things feel dated, but I think one thing I did give it credit for was Elizabeth Pena's character, who I completely forgot about, which was Chris Tucker's sort of like confidant in the police department. Like there, you very much get the sense that that they respect each other. It's fully platonic. That he's not constantly trying to hit on her or whatever. And I really enjoyed that scene.
He's not constantly trying to hit on her. Every interaction they have, he's obsessed with the idea that she's into him and always sort of brings that up.
Well,
but I feel that, to be fair, no, I feel that was on a level of like he knew she wanted to be his partner. I agree. I don't think that there was always this kind of hounding her sexual element. He asked her what underwear
she was wearing.
Yeah, to make sure that she was comfortable. He's a caring man.
It's just a very 90s thing, isn't it?
But she holds her own. Like, I guess that's the point I'm making. Like, she brushes him off, and
I will say it is impressive that you've got a franchise, 3 movies. You know, they're big budget studio things that are fronted by a man, you know, an Asian man who does not speak English well, and a black man. Like, in a way, you would think that they would have been like, all right, you can have Jackie Chan, but he needs to be paired up with Jim Carrey.
Yeah, or even the fact that that actress we're talking about, like, is she like Hispanic? Or
Yeah,
just the fact that they weren't like chucking a white woman or something like that.
But then you've got the most English man in the world, Tom Wilkinson, saying, the textbook stereotypical, I'm going to double cross you. And it's painfully
That's fine
obvious
though.
from
He's
the
a
start.
villain. It's fine.
Yeah, English equals bad guy.
You can see him counting how much money he's making every minute he's on screen. He's like, I'm going to use this money to go back to England and do theatre. I'm going, look at all this money. I can afford to do Shakespeare again.
But I guess like I kind of did respect again that they made it believable, and they were like, oh, this is, like synced up with the passing over of like Hong Kong, in which like, Britain like left, and give up ownership of that city, etc. So I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. So they have got some.
It is weird that there's a bit of a history lesson in the middle of your action comedy that halfway through they have to go, by the way, so there was this whole thing where the United Kingdom owned Hong Kong, and then they passed back jurisdiction to China, but the English are still quite upset about it, and China aren't so keen on the English because of it. Anyway, back to the shtick. It's just a bit random. It's like, it's a bit like after the Soviet Union fell and every film was like, we can't make Russia the bad guys anymore, and they're like, disgruntled ex-Soviet general. Yeah, all right, that works. Yeah.
Little did we know we only had to wait 30 more years before the Russians could be the bad guys again.
It's kind of like the Indiana Jones predicament, wasn't it? That they were kind of like, oh, well, we can't do the Nazis again because that isn't time like appropriate. It's like, oh, well, we can do like this Russian woman played by Cate Blanchett. And it's almost as if like now they were making this new one. They were like, oh, how do we like avoid that awkwardness? Oh, we'll just put in some time travel and get the Nazis back in from what that film seems like it's going to be.
It is a bit weird. I still find it a bit weird that there's this whole like political historical thing bubbling under the surface of what is essentially an excuse to watch a guy punch other guys. Like it'd be a bit like if your main villain was still upset about the partition in India. Like it'd be like, it's a comedy, guys.
I'm also a bit confused as to exactly why it was that his personal collection had to be given over because of the handover. Is it just because he was, I don't even know what you would call it, a consort, I guess? And he basically
it was like technically property of China that.
Yeah. It's kind of like the whole thing of like, what's that like diamond that like India like wants back from like the royal family and stuff like that. It's like that kind of thing.
Pry it from their cold dead hand. That's Rush Hour 4, where the villain is the royal family upset about having to give India back its jewels.
But even when you look aside from just that kind of like storyline and the kind of Jackie Chan martial arts, it's surprising when you look again compared to stuff now that like the action stuff and like even like the use of like guns and explosions, as we said earlier, is quite impactful. Like the gunshots in this, I was like, a gun's really changed since I like last watched like an action film, or like in modern action films, the silencers just that more effective because they were loud at certain points, and there's just like the fact that like that one villain was like, yeah, I'm just gonna fire a machine gun everywhere, just everywhere I go, just like take them all down. It was crazy how much again that this film wasn't just like, yeah, we got Jackie Chan, martial arts, funniness, and then we'll just have Chris Tucker like rolling around and falling over things. Like they were like, no, this is going to be like a kind of like gunfight film as well, which I was surprised at. And we'll have explosions, we'll have cars blowing up, we'll have motorbike chases and stuff like that.
To the point that there's like a final gun showdown between Chris Tucker and the main henchman at the end, where they both threaten to put their guns down, but they both have the same idea. But Chris Tucker's got one up over on him, and
I found all of that a bit. But I was a bit like, I would just rather Jackie Chan fighting people. Basically, what I want is a film in which Jackie Chan plays like the night watchman in a B&Q, and people break into the B&Q. And
have you not seen the first Equalizer movie? Because that's pretty much what you're describing.
Yeah, but it should have been Jackie Chan, and he gets his foot like stuck in a bucket, and he kicks the bucket, and then gets a guy. Like that would have been so much better.
I still thought there was like some well set up like action moments though. Even like when Jackie Chan was like falling off the beam at the end, and like the fact they used the banner and everything like that. I was like, it made for some like exciting, like maybe not exciting, but like compelling kind of like action in which you're like, oh yeah, that looks like somebody is actually falling down into that, especially when the villain does die. I was like, that's a pretty cool death as well, when you're like boom, yeah, ooh, okay.
I felt the impact.
For me, that was sort of undercut because they were trying to be too funny with it. Because when you have Chris Tucker going, don't worry, I'm just going to go call the ambulance and they'll come deal with you in an hour. And he's there like, no, I don't have time to do that. I'm just joking with you. Like, that just sort of killed any sort of tension for me. So I was just like, we obviously know he's going to be fine. Even Chris Tucker isn't even like distraught about this. I don't know why I care.
It did seem like they had to restrain Chris Tucker at that moment. Like, yeah, I'm going to do this crazy thing. No, we don't want that thing yet at the moment. He's like, no, but I'm Chris Tucker. I have to be Chris Tucker mode. So it's like sometimes you did want to have him rein it in a bit.
Okay, take those video cassettes, rewind them and play them again because it's time for VHS Corner. This week I've asked David if he can take us through a little bit of the behind the scenes of this film as well as some interesting trivia. So, David, what do you have for us?
Okay, so yeah, there's quite a slew of interesting sort of facts and trivia behind this one. So, while not literally a remake of Red Heat from 1988, a lot of people have acknowledged the fact that both movies are tough foreign policemen who go to the United States and partner up with cocky American policemen to take on a crime lord from the tough foreign policeman's country. Both fit into the subgenre of mismatched buddy cop movies such as 48 Hours, Lethal Weapon, Alien Nation, Dead Heat, and Black Rain, among others. So earlier we were talking about whether this was originally titled something else or like based on something. So I guess, you know, obviously a lot of those are kind of inspirations. When you look at Chris Tucker, we've also mentioned there about his comic style and the fact that whether he was as big a comic name as a lot of other actors in Hollywood at that moment. So it was said that Chris Tucker improvised much of his dialogue as he normally does in his movies. According to director Brett Ratner, during the scene at Grauman's where Detective Carter bribes Stuckey for information, there was so much improvisation between Tucker and John Hawkes that they almost did not think they could edit together as a coherent conversation. There are still continuity errors in the dialogue for that reason. So then when you look at again, on the topic of casting, originally Martin Lawrence apparently was the original choice for Carter. Eddie Murphy was also apparently offered the role, but he turned it down to make Holy Man in 1998 instead. David Chappelle, Will Smith, and Tupac Shakur were all considered for the role of Carter as well. So again, whether these would have gone down a better route or not, but it's funny again that we have all these other movie stars which were big like comic names at that time as well. When you then look at some of the more kind of realistic looks at some of the action, I guess. This one I found interesting, especially Aaron, because you said about the C4 earlier. Apparently, what people have analysed from this is when Carter shoots Clive's car, causing the C4 in the trunk to explode in a large fireball, in reality, C4 is an extremely stable but immensely powerful high-speed explosive, meaning that not only would it not be detonated when struck by a bullet, it also would not result in a fireball as seen in the film. Were the large amount of C4 in the trunk to explode at once, it would not only completely destroy the car, but the shockwave alone would likely result in Clive's death and likely knock Carter off his feet at the very least. So I thought that was quite interesting, which people are often talking about, you know, people jumping away from fireballs and would, you know, that actually blow up when you shoot it, etc., which has been made a joke in things like 21 Jump Street. And then the final one, which I noted, which is interesting, we were talking about IMDb earlier, and this I did not know about before, but apparently this film inspired the creation of the website Rotten Tomatoes. Site founder Sen Deong is a big Jackie Chan fan and built the website to collect reviews for all of Chan's Hong Kong movies as they were being released in the United States. He coded the site in 2 weeks, putting it up shortly before the release of this film. Rotten Tomatoes is now one of the most notable sources for movie reviews, and its tomato meter rating is used to judge a film's success and used in advertising and awards promotion. But apparently Rush Hour was like the first sort of like big release to go on there, and it started as a Jackie Chan fan base essentially. So yep, that is VHS Corner for this week. Those are the facts. What are your guys' reactions and thoughts? Any ones that specifically stand out?
So Rush Hour's to blame for Rotten Tomatoes.
I don't know if Paul looks happy or angry.
I'm going to
Well,
Jackie Chan's house with a crowbar.
It's really weird because it's put me in a bit of a predicament, and when we get to the movie vault, you'll understand why. But it's effectively changed the way in which internet reviewing of films necessarily occurs.
You'd think it would be for something a bit
grander.
Bit more
It's
highbrow.
weird what films are like. You know, like when you look at you're like what something major happens. What film caused it? And you're like, that film.
Yeah.
What's the reason?
What
You
film
know,
caused the death of HD DVD? Yeah.
Yeah, when you find out like the last film released on VHS was A History of Violence, and you're like, really? What a random film to be the last VHS ever produced. Like,
Yeah.
just being like, oh, Rush Hour is the reason why Rotten Tomatoes exists. You're like,
Isn't it it's a case of like it had to be one film? Like if not Rush Hour, it probably would have been Jackie Chan's next American-made movie. Like
yeah,
I don't know.
It's just weird that that's what resulted in it. It's weird that it's like.
But I guess it makes sense in the fact that he was making a Jackie Chan like database of all his films and rating them like as to how good they were, and it was like, oh, okay, this coincidentally happens to be the next film on the list, and I guess then it's like, oh, okay, this is actually an American film compared to all the others. Let's just start doing every other American film.
But it's also just weird to think that it was also dedicated specifically to Jackie Chan, which begs the question, why Rotten Tomatoes? Because David and I obviously, when coming up with the name for this podcast, we talked about Rotten Tomatoes insofar as, the inspiration, it needs to be something that's like not directly connected to like films per se, but something that people could be like recognizable, whatnot. So now that I'm trying to think, what is the connection between Jackie Chan and like tomatoes? Is there like a film where he's like throwing tomatoes at somebody or like deflecting them?
I assume that the tomato, like the whole Rotten Tomatoes thing, is that if it's if it's bad, you throw tomatoes
rotten or
on
fresh.
stage. Like but I'm like, but you wouldn't call your Jackie Chan database like unless you hate Jackie. Does he hate Jackie Chan? He's like, who's in crap films? Rotten Tomatoes. I want to know how many films he's made so I can pelt him with tomatoes. It's it's a bit like I always think Michelin stars. I'm like, why are you trusting a tire company to tell you what food is good?
The Guinness World Record.
Yeah, it's a disgusting drink old men drink. What does it matter how many toenails someone has? Like it's
10,
just,
I hope.
well, it's like, but yeah, it's like the Michelin star thing where it's like it's a tire company. I don't trust the tire company to tell me what tastes good.
Are you saying the Rotten Tomatoes is someday going to be like the HP Rotten Tomato or like the HP Sauce Fresh Tomatoes or something like that?
It's so bizarre. That is baffling to me. I did not know that, and now it just makes Rotten Tomatoes make even less sense than it did before.
Nobody tell Jackie Chan this fact, otherwise he'll be, coming after Rotten Tomatoes for all the royalty ad money that he's probably owed.
How many? Well, also you must think then it's going to suck if Jackie Chan films are rotten.
I guess though, but if he just kind of if he didn't himself think to himself, I want to like, if he just wanted to collect reviews together and measure like bad against good, like similar if you had like a Godzilla fan base that you would be like, okay, I love these movies, but I understand that like a lot of them are panned and like terrible. So let's actually see the ratio as to like how bad they're received. Because if he's mainly going off
it does sound like what he wanted was IMDb. What he wanted, clearly, what this guy was looking for was a filmography. He wanted a Wikipedia page of movies Jackie Chan had made.
He's created a monster. He's like, I'm sorry, it just went out of control. Aaron, was there any other facts there that sort of stood out to you as somebody who's been a fan of the Rush Hour films?
It's weird, isn't it? Because I can't picture, and I suppose this is the mark of like a great performance. Ultimately, I can't picture anybody else in the role of Detective James Carter other than Chris Tucker. So to hear that, I mean, you've got the usual the people that I would consider, standard at that time for this type of role: Will Smith, Eddie Murphy, Dave Chappelle. I think you said as well. Was that right?
Chappelle
David?
makes sense. I could see Chappelle doing.
Yeah. But
Black
then
Tupac
Shakur. Yeah. That is the weirdest casting, like potential casting I've heard since. Oh, who was it that James Cameron considered for the Terminator? Was it O.J. Simpson?
Yeah.
I believe.
Didn't cast him
God
because he thought
happen.
OJ seemed too nice.
Yeah. OJ would never be capable of murder.
OJ wouldn't kill somebody in cold blood.
And it's the idea that, you know, Bad Boys had already come out, so that they were like, yeah, Martin Lawrence. It's like, but he's already done this, you know. So again, and I assume,
and Will Smith,
yeah, it would have been a lot more angry at Jackie Chan, which probably wouldn't have come across as well either. As well, that this like guy has come over from China, and you just got angry Martin Lawrence being like, why the hell am I with this guy? You know, he was like, whoa, okay, you know, the sort of racial jokes wouldn't have gone well.
The Chinese jokes wouldn't have come across as good. Like Chris Tucker makes them seem kind of good natured when, you know, he's like, how you doing, Kung Pao Chicken? It's like, all right, it seems it's racist, but it's kind of friendly racist. Whereas, you know, Martin Lawrence be like, how you doing, Kung Pao Chicken? It's like, whoa.
Yeah, to be fair, any person with such a high-pitched voice, you're just going, oh, you're just making as many jokes as you can because you want to avoid ridicule. Yeah, fair enough. Like, you are effectively harmless because, let's face it, we can take you. Martin Lawrence is not the case.
No, it's like Chris Rock has the same thing as well. You know, he walking around and he does that kind of shtick. You'd be like, it's good natured, it's a bit offensive, but it's okay. But yeah, Will Smith walking around dropping racial slurs, you'd be like, whoa, they're just Asian,
and
man.
again, like
relax.
Eddie Murphy, it makes sense because, you know, he was in so many comedies and stuff like that, and that's why I felt like reading it. I was just like, oh well, you know, maybe that's what they wanted in that I Spy film, which again, I know not many people remember.
48 hours. But with Jackie Chan instead of Nick Nolte.
Yeah, I think they had the best balance in the end. I think that Eddie Murphy might have been a bit too comedic. You know, I think the Martin Lawrence, as we said, might have been a bit too harsh. You know, so I think that even though Chris Tucker hasn't really done all that much since, and, you know, he tends to go off the handle a bit with his kind of improvisation, I think that, as we've said, with the bloopers and other moments in the film, it does kind of work in its favor. So right, well, we'll wrap up now and decide if Rush Hour will make it into our movie vault. So for anyone who doesn't know, then this is our time capsule of films, good and sometimes bad, that should be remembered for someone to potentially dig up in the future. Maybe it deserves its fame, maybe it's been forgotten, or maybe it's great but just doesn't quite fit the bill. So should Rush Hour gain the honor of a place in our movie vault and be remembered for all time? Let's go to Aaron first, just because obviously he's the one maybe who has the most links to this franchise.
Can I just say I agreed to appear on this podcast before I knew that Rush Hour was going to be the movie. So it's an incredible happenstance that I'm talking about it. So I might surprise people here and say that, I mean, the whole Rotten Tomatoes thing adds a new sort of like notch to this bedpost or whatever, because it's a important part of culture, it turns out, is 1998's Rush Hour. But for me, I think everything this movie does, Rush Hour 2 does better, more succinctly, and it has, it's a more interesting story for one, and a better relationship between the two. So I'd say you could probably do without Rush Hour. There are probably better buddy cop comedies on the whole. So for me, I'd probably leave it out of the vault.
And I'm pretty sure Craig's going to sort of say the same thing or agree, in the sense that, like, as we've often talked about, the outside stuff we try to sort of sometimes negate. Like, yes, a film might have been like, oh my God, this inspired like an entire generation of fans of this type of genre or medium. But the Rotten Tomatoes thing, again, is like that. You don't experience that within the film. Like, that's just an exterior thing. So I think when we're looking at it as like a singular experience, I think that you are right, that there is an element of like, oh, they seem to be just like getting used to this chemistry. There definitely seems to be an element of like things that work because it's a buddy cop comedy, but maybe not the best buddy cop comedy. Craig, what's your thoughts?
You did a very good job at actually explaining what I could have easily done so myself. So thank you, David. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I don't think this film should go in, purely because... So, I mean, from a film viewing experience, obviously I haven't had like a sense of nostalgia with this film. I'm very much watching this from a different time, but nothing about this film wowed me in a sort of, wow, this is a very, very good example of something. I thought a lot of the film, I enjoyed the action. I thought the action was like pretty good, but is it the most spectacular sort of action I've seen from this sort of genre? No, it's not. Like, the character dynamics, I've made it very clear that I, as much as given the alternatives, probably the most appropriate, I wasn't that wowed by Chris Tucker. I wasn't that enamored by the performance. I found that they didn't actually do as much of the sort of dynamic stuff with buddy cops that I actually expect. And also just then when sort of going outside, anyone who's ever mentioned Rush Hour to me has always mentioned Rush Hour 2. So I think willing to give that film a chance at some point in the future, but because culturally it seems that was the film that seemed to be more like pushing for these things, at which point I would probably say Rush Hour, sorry, no. I think even Ed may have mentioned it at one point, which is like people note the sequel more, but he just happened to watch Rush Hour, and just that's why he wanted to suggest it for us to watch.
Paul, you're going to throw us a curveball and be like, actually, everything I said.
No, I'm not. In fact, I thought it was going to be me and Craig versus you two on. That's what I was gearing up for. Hey, it's 2 against 2 now because I don't think it should be in the vault either. But I'm surprised that Aaron wasn't on board for the vault. It's fine. I remember finding it funnier than I actually found it on a rewatch, and I think it's okay. There are Jackie Chan films I prefer. Chris Tucker's okay. There are bits in it I like, and it's watchable. It's not like it's a difficult film to sit through. Like if I'm flicking through the TV, there's nothing else on. I see Rush Hour starting. I'll be like, all right, I'll watch it. But I don't. If it got wiped from the, if this vault is all that's left of film after the apocalypse, I don't think Rush Hour is a great loss to cinema, frankly. I think it's fine.
I think it's also quite telling that a large amount of this podcast, which is meant to be talking about Rush Hour, we've been going on massive tangents about small thing that is in Rush Hour and then feed off into loads of other things which aren't Rush Hour.
It's just fine. It's fine.
Yeah, and I think you're right in the sense that, I think it's a good kind of Sunday movie kind of turn on in the background. There's not many, I'm usually somebody who's like, no, you can't, you need to sit down and watch the film. I don't want to watch a film halfway through. I don't want adverts breaking something up. But if it's something like this, then I'm like, okay, I don't care as much because again, it's not the most revolutionary thing ever.
If it introduces people to martial arts as it did me as a kid, I remember then just being into Jackie Chan martial arts movies. If somebody watches it, that's probably its saving grace is that, someone will watch it and be like, oh, that's really cool. And then they discover, the Hong Kong stuff he did before he came. And then they discover John Woo. And then they discover, Chow Yun-fat and stuff like that and Michelle Yeoh. Then that's a good thing. But the film itself is...
So to summarize Paul's point, if Rush Hour can introduce people to Rush Hour 2... or better yet, Bulletproof Monk.
So yeah, I think it won't go in on the premise of potentially people will watch number 2 if they watch this. So I think this week, unfortunately,
just watch number 2. Look, he's from Hong Kong, he's from LA. Boom. That's all you need to know. He's good at punching and he's good at shouting. Oh, what was the plot of the first one? He's good at shouting.
Yeah.
The one that's from LA. The Chris Tucker, he's good at shouting. The Jackie Chan, he doesn't talk. He just wants to be your friend.
He's good.
But everyone wants to...
It's going to come in more handy when you're facing endless amount of bad guys.
Can I just say, when Paul just said he's from Hong Kong, he's from LA, for some reason I imagined it as one of the lyrics to Avril Lavigne's Skater Boy.
He's from Hong Kong, he's from LA. What more can
I say?
He's from Hong Kong. What more can we say? Yeah.
He was a martial arts.
Well, yeah. So Rush Hour did not make it into the movie vault this week. Do you agree? Let us know at home. Should Rush Hour 2 go in the future? We want to know.
Yes.
We're in the end game now.
It's so annoying.
Okay, endgame time. This is a game that I lovingly call Buddy Buddy Good Time, hashtag Allahan and Grimshaw. So one of the things that I love about buddy cop films is that I always love the dynamic of purely just saying the names of the two cops. It's always good when you have that strong partnership. So in this case, you have Lee and Carter. I always love it when you merge the surnames of those cops together. So what I've done is I've taken a series of buddy cop films, and I've renamed them as if they were just going to be like the cop's name and the cop's name. So just to give a couple of examples, David, if I were to give you the names Mills and Somerset, that film is... Seven. Yeah, exactly. And you even have films utilizing this as well. You have like the Fast and the Furious having their Hobbs and Shaw, just the merging of those names. So basically, I just want to see how well you can identify what films are by the two names of their cops. Sound good?
Okay.
First things first, we're going to have a little tease for what it is you'll be playing for. As usual, you'll have the ability, if you win the endgame, to choose which of the various films you'll be presented with. Granted, you won't know exactly which film it is. You'll only know a little hint about it. We'll be discussing in the next episode. So, David, give us a little tease about what your film would be.
So in the past, I think the connect sometimes when we've had films close to each other in terms of release, I think we've had a film that was literally released like the next year to the last one. I've actually gone for a film in the same year. So this is from 1998. And I'm continuing the kind of theme of duos. But here, instead of going with a buddy cop duo, this is kind of like master and apprentice, like the teacher and the student. And also I'm going along the lines of combat. So where's this hand martial arts? Again, this was a 1998 film which used a lot of like choreography and fighting, and yeah, I think it'd just be a very fun time to talk about this film, and it's very relevant because of another film that's out recently as well.
Interesting perspective from David. I'm now trying to get Star Wars sequels out of my head because that was obviously not the same.
Yes, 1998.
Interesting. Paul, tease us about what film you'd like to put forward.
Okay, so I have also gone on the theme of double act type things. Not buddy cop, but my one is from 1988, and it's again pitting two people with different kind of personas on screen together, and using that kind of juxtaposition for laughs.
Okay, interesting. So another double act, but very much in a combative sense. And finally, Aaron, what would you like to put forward?
Well, I think it's third time lucky because I've also gone for the odd couple sort of angle. My movie's from 1993, so a couple of years before the movie discussed. It's not so much a comedy, but it does feature two 90s acting titans duking it out against one another. Very different personalities off screen, very different personalities on screen.
Interesting. So what we have is an interesting assortment of double acts. All spaced 5 years apart, pretty much. Interesting. So, you can have, the winner of the endgame, you can have any one of those three choices. So it doesn't have to be the film you put forward necessarily. It is very much up to you. But first, you have to win the endgame to win that privilege. So the way this will happen is I'm going to read out the two names, and then I want you to sort of buzz in. Now, the way your buzz will work is I want you to say, buddy. So we'll just do a quick experiment for this. So, Paul, your buzzer would be...
buddy.
And Aaron?
Buddy.
Cool. I should be able to differentiate. David will be sort of somewhat like VR check in the event of a tie. Okay, so this will be relatively quick fire. So, all right. Are you ready?
Yep.
Let's do it.
Let's do this. So your first pairing is Ashburn and Mullins. Ashburn and Mullins.
Buddy, 48 hours?
Is it 48 hours? It is incorrect. It is not 48 hours.
That was a good guess.
Any guesses from you, Aaron?
I'll say The Last Boy Scout. I don't know.
Is it The Last Boy Scouts? Nope, it is not. The answer is The Heat.
The Heat. Oh,
The Sandra Bullock, Melissa McCarthy film.
Didn't see it.
a classic of the genre, if I do say so myself.
And with that, I'd like to wave goodbye to female representation for the remainder of this round. An unfortunate side effect of the buddy cop genre we have not discussed. All right, next up. Butterman and Angel.
Oh, Buddy.
Buddy.
Ooh, David?
I think Aaron might have just got in there.
Yeah, I think I heard Paul say ooh first, but then slightly Aaron said Buddy.
Well, as a fellow West Countryman, I'll say Hot Fuzz, the best of the Cornetto trilogy.
David, do you know the answer?
I'm not 100% actually, but
I mean, yes, it is obviously the correct answer.
I was like, I'm going to press this, but I was like, I don't know if that's correct. But...
I was not going to lead you up into like, you know the answer, not that. Right. Yes, it is Hot Fuzz. So that is 1 point to Aaron. I'm guessing that's what you're going to go for as well, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, Sergeant Nicholas Angel. All right, next up. Burnett and Lowry.
Oh, Buddy.
Paul.
Bad Boys.
Yes, that is Bad Boys.
McLary. That's the only one I knew.
Yeah.
Okay, next up. Gamble and Hoyts.
Oh, Hoyts seems like it should be a giveaway. Oh, Buddy.
Aaron?
Is it the other guys?
Is it the other guys? Yes, indeed it is.
Oh, man.
I love that film.
Embarrassed I didn't get that one.
Okay, next up. J and K.
No, Buddy.
That's Paul. That is definitely Paul.
That's Men in Black.
That is indeed Men in Black. Wonderful. Next up. Miller and Lord.
Aren't those the people that made Han Solo and they got kicked off?
That might be an indicator to what I'm thinking, though, in terms of like what they've been involved in.
I think that, well, it has to be a movie, right?
These are characters' names in movies, yes. That's why David, like, suggesting going down the filmmaker route, I was like, maybe don't lead them astray, David.
That's what I thought.
I'll say, Buddy, I'll say 21 Jump Street, but I think it's wrong. I don't know.
You are correct. It is 21 Jump Street.
Oh, well, that's what my thinking was as well. So I was...
Okay.
Did Lord and Miller have anything to do with it?
Yeah, they were. I think they were
topic.
either writers or producers on it.
Next one. And I definitely recommend being quick off the mark for this one. Turner and Hooch.
Buddy. Turner and Hooch.
Yeah, it's Turner and Hooch.
I froze.
Yeah, so I will say some of these will just be the names of the films actually set, because it's a good naming dynamic. Some films just went for it. Next up, Riggs and Murtaugh.
Buddy.
That was, David?
I don't know, that was very close.
Because I think it was the similar situation. Like you had the ooh and then the Buddy.
I think
right
it was
at the same
Aaron in terms
time.
I heard him say the name Buddy first.
Okay, Aaron?
Can you say the names again one more time?
Oh.
Are you joking? No.
Lethal Weapon, then.
It is, yeah, it's Lethal Weapon.
I was like, he did say what I thought he said, right?
Did I imagine that?
Next up, Hops and Wild.
Buddy.
Paul.
Zootropolis / Zootopia, whatever it's.
I will accept either of those answers. That is correct. And I slightly lied when I said goodbye to a goodbye to all female representation.
Yeah.
I guess what I meant in terms of
Humans.
both pairings.
Being female, yeah.
Yeah. I can now happily say goodbye to all female representation in the rest of this quiz. All right, next up. Foley and Rosewood.
Buddy.
Aaron?
Beverly Hills Cop.
Correct answer. Beverly Hills Cop. The famous Axel Foley. Eddie Murphy. Okay, next up. Tango and Cash.
Buddy.
That was Aaron.
Oh, what could it be? Tango and Cash.
Yep, it's Tango and Cash. Okay. 2 left, so everything to play for. Doyle and Russo.
Buddy. Are they the cops in The Mask?
I think you're right.
That is incorrect, unfortunately.
Doyle?
Yeah, see, that's what I was thinking. I don't know.
I have no idea. Point Break.
Is it Point Break? It is not Point Break. It's The French Connection.
Oh,
Never seen it.
Popeye Doyle. Oh, man, that's bad.
Okay, the final question. We have Lockhart and Van Shrike.
Oh, Buddy.
Aaron?
Is it that second name sounds like futuristic, so I'll go for that Valerian City of 1,000 Planets or whatever it was called. Probably not that.
Is it that incredibly vague title? No, it is not.
Lockhart Van Shrike.
Yeah.
Good name for a rock band, that.
Yeah.
Oh, if this is actually what I'm thinking it is, I'm like, oh god, this is coming.
Buddy, is it Red Heat?
Is it Red Heat? Nope, not Red Heat. David, what do you think it is?
Is it Bright?
Is it Bright? No, it is not. It's Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Oh, of course.
Shane Black. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that is the end of the round. So very tight, but in the end, Paul, you had 4, but slightly in the lead. And the winner, we have Aaron with 6.
Take that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, how do you feel? Your first endgame win?
Oh, well, I'd like to thank, obviously, everybody who got me here, my parents for birthing me, everything that led to
Are you
this
going to do a
moment,
Michelle
really.
Yeoh
And most
at the
of all,
Golden Globes where she starts to get played off? Like, no.
I'm going to do a Christopher Judge at the Game Awards last year, which I believe set the record for longest speeches. No, thanks to James Carter and Chief Inspector Lee. There you go.
Wonderful. So now, as we said, you have the choice of the 3 films in front of you, of which is discussed in the next episode. So, would you like David's film from 1998? Would you like Paul's film from 1988? Or are you going to go with your choice from 1993?
Oh, this is tough. Because I feel guilty if I pick my own movie.
You're a better man than me.
Okay, I will be. I may never win the Endgame challenge again, if indeed I do appear again. So I will pick my one. Cool. I'll give you the tagline, shall I? And I'll let you guys guess. You'll know instantly what it is. The 21st century's most dangerous cop. The 21st century's most ruthless criminal.
Wait, it's...
Simon says the
Oh,
answer is...
Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Oh, no. Demolition Man.
Demolition Man?
Of course it is.
Time travel, baby.
Interesting.
See, I stupidly was going to say Face Off for some reason, but...
When you described it, I thought it was Heat. When you originally described the movie, I was like, Heat?
Well, I almost threw the time travel element in there, but I thought that would be too obvious.
No, but still, it's an interesting choice. I think it's very much taking us down an interesting line that we haven't really explored yet in the sort of timeline of this show. So, David, tell us, where can we watch Demolition Man?
So at the moment, rent it on places like Apple TV, Chili, Amazon, those kind of usual places. Or, of course, as we always say as well, there is physical media if you do have a copy of the film or you're able to find it anywhere as well. We always like to support watching on DVD, Blu-ray, VHS, however way you can watch it. Time travel. Maybe you can actually time travel and watch it in the cinema.
At the end of a century, ravaged by violence, a society of perfect order will arise. Criminals will be frozen and reprogrammed in cryogenic prisons.
The prisoners are ice cubes. Their criminal instincts are being reprogrammed as they sleep.
Aggression and deviant behavior will be totally eliminated.
He's a criminal the likes of which you have never seen. In a bad time, he was the worst.
I'm gonna love running this place.
But in the year 2032,
This morning, Simon Phoenix escaped from this cryo facility. We are, quite frankly, not equipped to deal with the situation.
amidst a world of peace and calm,
We're police officers. We're not trained for this kind of violence.
How was the fiendish Simon Phoenix apprehended back in the 20th?
In the end, it took just one man, John Spartan.
You mean the Demolition Man?
The conditions of your parole are full reinstatement into the SAPD and immediate assignment to the apprehension of Simon Phoenix.
Two mortal enemies
Just dropped in to say hi.
from another time.
Pass is over, John. Time for something new and improved. Oh, hell.
Will be unleashed on a future that isn't big enough for the both of them. Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes, Demolition Man.
Awesome. Well, yeah, this isn't one I've seen, but I'm aware of it. So I think that, yeah, that's going to be a fun one to like go through. And like I said, it's cool that, yeah, we've got like a kind of science fiction film, which we haven't had like in quite a while as well. Paul, just so we know, if you do get a chance to have your film again in the future, we usually keep them for like a sort of stack of films that we might randomly choose when we have like big challenge episodes. So that's how 7 was chosen to start off the year. What was your choice?
My choice was Twins. With Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito.
And another one that people are like, is there going to be a sequel and all this kind of stuff? But it is a great premise of just being like those two guys next to each other. It's just, it sells itself. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us. And yeah, we had a great end game there. Well done to Aaron. And we can't wait to watch Demolition Man on our next episode. Definitely will be giving us all the variety of going from 7 to this week with Rush Hour. And now a completely different film next time. Who knows where that will lead us to in connection to that one. So yeah, guys, where can people find you? Have you had any projects or anything that you want to sort of shout out about? Aaron, where are you online, etc.?
You can find me basically a whole bunch of places, but these days Twitter is probably the best place. You can find me at It's Me Aaron P. That's Aaron with 2 A's and 1 R on Twitter.
Awesome. And Paul?
You can. I don't know how long Twitter's going to be alive for, but while it's alive, I'll be there. Last man on the wall. At Paul Klein Yo with 2 O's, and from there you can find all my other stuff, my Letterboxd, where I do my film reviews, TikTok. I'm on TikTok, if you could believe such a thing. You know, all those sort of stuff. Anywhere where the internet exists, that's where I am, and I'm making terrible jokes. And
TikTok is where you'll find the buddy cop skits of you being grumpy with Anna Kendrick.
Before I sell it off to Netflix, it lasts 2 seasons before it gets cancelled.
Better that than Quibi.
Oh God, yeah, I remember that. Wow.
Bring back VAR.
Right, well, thank you for joining us, guys. It's been an awesome episode. Craig, anything lastly from yourself?
Nope, just I'm looking forward to the demolition.
Okay. Right, well.
Sounds like it.
Thank you once again, guys, and we'll see you next time for Demolition Man. Thank you once again, Aaron and Paul. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.
See y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
To keep up with the latest episodes of Well Good Movies, you can listen to us on all your usual podcast outlets, including Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and more. Don't forget to follow us, subscribe, and rate us where you can to keep our podcast growing. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Well Good Movies to keep up with the latest news and highlights from all our episodes, as well as tell us what movies you want to be discussed in the future. And if all of that isn't enough, you can also find us at our website, freshtakehub.com/wellgoodmovies, where you can catch all our episodes along with videos and articles deep diving into the worlds of film and television. So what are you waiting for? Go check out the film we'll be discussing in next time's episode.
Why have I not got a pen? Come on, Craig, sort your life out.